Here we go, section 11.9, translations and reflections of trig graphs. This is the last section here of unit 9. So we're going to take graphing sine and cosine, and we're going to talk about shifting left and right, but we're only going to graph, or left, right, up and down. We're only going to graph the up and down shift, though, because graphing left and right is actually quite difficult. So here where it says example 1, you can see the transformations of graphs of sine and cosine. So right here we have a sine, and so the only thing different from what we've done so far is now we have an h and a k value. And just like everything we've done in the past, h and k is like your starting point or your center or whatever you're trying to graph. It's kind of where you begin your graph. H has always been the left or right movement. K is your up or down movement. And with sine and cosine, it still holds the same. Like I said, we're only going to worry about the vertical shift, which is just our k value. So we're only going to worry about this. You don't have to worry about flipping any signs or anything. So if it says, a sine of 3x and then it says plus 11, that means you're going to shift your graph up 11. It's pretty straightforward when we don't include the horizontal shift. So here, for example, we're graphing y equals sine of x and then plus 5. So if I'm looking up here, this x would be in the parentheses, and then the plus 5 would be our k value. If you want to think of it like that, you certainly can. So we're still going to find our amplitude, our period, and now we're going to add our shift. Our table values are still going to stay the same. So starting with the amplitude, that is the a value up front. If it's not, if you don't see a number, it is just 1. Which means, if you remember, that's how far up above the horizontal axis we go and how far below. Now, before, horizontal axis was always the x-axis. There's always this line right here. Now that's going to shift with our k value, so it's how far above or how far below we are of our shift. The period, it's always 2 pi divided by our b value. Well, our b value is right here in front of x, so it's just 1. So our period is just 2 pi. If I can get that to right, there we go. So our period is 2 pi, so what that means is we start at 0, and we're ending out here at 2 pi. So on my table, 0 and 2 pi. That's where we're going to end. And then last but not least, the shift. So because my k value here is 5, we're going to shift our starting point up to 0, 5. So let's just say that's right here. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So our starting value will be right there at 0, 5. Okay, so then again for our table, you probably remember the values, but what I'm going to do is first find the middle between 0 and 2 pi. That is just 1 pi or pi, so put it in my table as well. Then I'm going to find the middle of 0 and pi, which is just pi over 2, and it keeps coming back to those quadrantal angles, so 0, 90, 180, 270, 360. It kind of keeps coming back to those in a way. And then halfway between pi and 2 pi is 3 pi over 2. So we have our shift, we have our period, we know where we're going to end. We have our amplitude. So again, what this means is I'm going up 1 above my, let me draw this in here. So this is going to be like my new x-axis here. It's going to be the new middle of my sine, my horizontal middle of my sine graph. So what the amplitude means is I'm going up 1 from that and down 1 from that. So you can kind of probably predict those values. But again, my table, so if I do this quickly, make this here one more time. So if I have a point here, it would be 1, 0. This would be 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. And then if you remember, we have sine y and cosine is the x value of those points. Right now, all I care about is the y values. So if I start with 0, pi over 2, I'll fill in this one the whole way here for you. 3 pi over 2, and then if I come back all the way around, 2 pi. So if I start with, I plug in 0 into my function, so sine of 0 is all I'm figuring out. You look at the y value and you get 0 back. Then we have pi over 2. So again, you look at the y value, sine of pi over 2 is 1. So then remember, we're shifting, so we're not starting actually at 0, 0 here. We're actually starting up 5, and I already marked my starting point here at 0, 5. So from there, I would go up 1. I forgot to put my pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2 here. So at pi over 2, I'm going to go up 1. Let's change the color. So I'm going up. Okay, and then if you want to find sine of pi, take the y value, and it's 0 again. And like I said, you should kind of see a little pattern here every time we graph these, which is going to make your life a little easier. So now we come back down to 0. At 3 pi over 2, you can probably predict what's going to happen, but here it is. It is negative 1. So we'll come down here. We'll go down 1 from where we were starting. And then at 2 pi again, we have 0, so we're going to come back up to 2 pi. So everything is the same, except now we are shifting our graph up or down. So I'll do one more example, and then we'll take a look here at writing equations, different equations given information or given a graph. So here we have a cosine example, which is good. So we'll do one sine, one cosine example, but it's written a little differently. It says 3 plus 1/2 of cosine of 1/2 times cosine of pi x. So really, this is just a way to trick you. You probably should rewrite this as y equals 1/2 cosine of 2 pi. And if you want, you can put that part in parentheses and then the plus 3 behind it so you can clearly see our k value. Up to you, does not matter. So starting from the beginning, first of all, the amplitude is our a value here. So we are going up 1/2 and down 1/2. And again, that's from wherever our shift occurs because that's going to be our new horizontal axis. The period is 2 pi divided by our b value. Here's b, so 2 pi divided by b is just 2. So that means I'm starting at 0 and I'm ending out here at 2. So a little bit different than what we're used to. And then again, if you want to find the values for your table, you find the difference between 1 and 2, or 0 and 2, and you get 1. Put that in the middle of my table. Find the middle between 0 and 1, and you get 1/2. And the middle of 1 and 2 would be not 3 pi, but just 3 halves. Just 3 halves here. Well, there we go. All right, the shift occurs from our k value out back here. So this is the one new thing. So if my k value is plus 3, that means 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means I'm just starting my graph, shifting my graph up here. I'm starting at 0, 3 instead of 0, 0. So that's our only change. Now, again, just a reminder of how these values work. When you plug them in, we took care of A, we took care of the shift, so you only have y equals cosine of 2, why did I write 2 pi? It should be pi x there, sorry. So y equals cosine of pi times x. That's all we have to worry about. And then the x values, of course, come from right here, so we'll plug those x values in. So we'll start with 0, so y equals cosine of pi times 0, which is just cosine of 0. And if you want, I mean, hopefully by now we kind of know the coordinates of these points, but do it one more time. 1, 0, this would be 0, 1, negative 1, 0, and 0, negative 1. So when we plug these in, I'm looking for cosine of 0, that's over here. Fill this in quickly. So cosine is 0. Now cosine is the x value of the coordinate point, so that would be right here. So we're going to go 0, 1. You plug 1/2 in, it does the same thing. So cosine of pi times 1/2 is just pi over 2. So cosine of pi over 2, the x value is 0. You plug 1 in there. 1 times pi is just pi, so cosine of pi is -1. Then you do the same thing with 3 pi over 2, or 3 over 2. 3 over 2 times pi is just 3 pi over 2. So that would be the x value here, or 0. And then the last one would be 2, so cosine of 2 times pi is just 2 pi. Again, the x value, we're back to 1. Now, reminder, the a value here comes from out front again. So you're just going to take 1/2 times all of these. So 1/2, 0, -1/2, 0, 1/2. So you start there at your shift. I'll highlight my starting point there. Starting right here. And from there, we go at 1/2, or at 0. We got that. At 1/2, we go, no, what did I forget here? So yeah, sorry. Let me draw this in here again. This is why I'm confused. I'm going to draw my horizontal axis. Okay, so at 0, I go up 1/2 from there, so that's going to put me right here instead. So that's my starting point. I should have drawn my horizontal axis in there. Now from there, when I go over to 1/2, I'm back down to 0, so I'm back down to that horizontal x-axis. So there it is. When I go over to 1, I go down 1/2 from that line, so about right there, if you can imagine, somewhere about 2.5 there. At 3/2, I'm back up to 0, and then at 2, I go back up to about 1/2, so somewhere about right there. So it's kind of like that. So my advice would be, where it says shift, draw your horizontal axis again. It's like your new x-axis, and then you mark those points off of that. Because with sine, it's pretty straightforward. You can mark that point like I got away with up here. But cosine, you don't actually start on the axis. You start above that axis. So you want to be careful with that a little bit. So there are two more here, one sine, one cosine. This one you might have to rewrite, but I would encourage you to sit down and try those examples here. But I want to move on here to writing equations of the graph described. So take the graph, y equals 1/3 cosine of 2x. And we want to shift it up 4 units, so that's our k value. So all we need to do is just add a plus 4. Boom, done. Y equals 8 times sine of 1/2 x. I want to shift it down 3 units. We'll go -3. Done there. And y equals 2/3 cosine of 3x. We want to shift it up 2, so we'll go +2. So pretty straightforward, like I said. When we don't have that left or right shift, all we have to worry about is that k value behind our function. So now let's take a look here at just a few more where we're given the graph. We have to write the key properties here, the amplitude, the period, the shift, and then we have to decide whether sine or cosine and actually write the equation. So here we go, example number 7, the amplitude. So you look at your horizontal axis here, which is right here. It is the x-axis, which means we have not shifted it up or down. So my shift would be 0, 0, or none. We didn't shift it at all, so there's no k value, is what I'm trying to say. So my amplitude here is how far above or below do we go? Well, if this line up here represents 1, this line right here would be 1/2. So I went up 1/2, I went down 1/2, so that's my amplitude. So right now y equals 1/2. Okay, the period. So where or how long does it take before we have one complete cycle? Well, we start right here and we end right here. So we have one complete cycle before it starts to repeat itself right there. So the question is, what is that value for that second circle that I made there? Well, if you look at what each box represents, this is 1/4. This would be right here, this would be 2/4 or 1/2. This would be 3/4. and this would be 1 if you just keep adding a fourth each time. So my period is 1. Okay, so what I need though for my equation, let me write the basic equation here. So it's going to be y equals, we'll talk about sine or cosine, but it doesn't matter because the generic form is the same for both. You just change out the trig function. So I'll go y equals a times sine of bx plus k is what we're looking for. So we found a. A is 1/2. Now b is not 1, but remember we did this before. In order to find b, we have to take 2 pi over b and set that equal to our period. Our period was 1. And then you'd have to cross multiply, so b times 1 is b, and then 2 pi times 1 is 2 pi. So there's your b value for your equation. So we found b, it is 2 pi. Our k value is 0 because we are not moving this graph up or down. It's starting at the origin. But now we have to figure out, is this sine or cosine? So if you start, how do I want to say? If you start at 0, 0, or if you draw that horizontal x-axis like we have here, and you're starting like in the middle of it, you're not at the top or the bottom of your graph, you start in the middle. If it's halfway between, like you see how, let's erase this quickly. You see how each graph has this stretch where you go up or down like that. If you're starting halfway in the middle, it's going to be sine. So this is a sine graph. So we know we can write our equation now. Y equals 1/2 times sine of bx. So we found b to be 2 pi x. And then plus k. Well, we don't have a k, so you can go plus 0, but technically you don't even need that. So final answer is y equals 1/2 times sine of 2 pi x. So we'll try just a couple more here. Write the properties of the graph. So again, here's your generic form right up here. So we need a, b, and k. So first of all, let's start with the shift. We're starting here at what looks to be 0, 6. So there is your k value. Okay, so we know it's going to be something plus 6. So we started up. Okay, the amplitude. So how far away from 6 are we going? So the first thing you should probably do is figure out what each of these lines represents. We're going by 2's here. So 2, 4, 6, 8. So I'm going all the way up. I'm going up 2 from 6. I'm going from, or 6, it should be 8. I'm going from 6 to 8, so I'm going up 2, and then from 6 to 4, so I'm going down 2. So there's my amplitude. So my A value is 2. The period, so how far does it take before we cycle again here? So we start here, we go up, we come back down, and then we got to go underneath and come back up. So there's where we end. That looks to be, so 1, 2, 3, it looks like it's happening here at 4. So my period is 4. So we have to use that to find our b value quickly. So you always start with 2 pi over b equals that number. You can put it over 1 if you want, and then cross multiply. So 2 pi equals 4b, divide by 4, b equals, b equals pi over 2 if you simplify that right there. So our b value is pi over 2. So we go pi over 2x. We just have to figure out what trig function. And again, if you draw that horizontal x-axis, you see how it's kind of splitting up that rise there. That's not what I wanted to erase. We're kind of splitting this up. So we're starting here at 0, 0. We're starting on the line. Maybe that makes more sense. We're starting here on that horizontal x-axis on our shift, or if it is the actual x-axis. So that's going to make it sine again. So that would be our function. Y equals 2 times sine of pi over 2x plus 6. So let's take a look at the difference between sine and cosine here. So I'm basically telling you the next one here is going to be cosine. But you should be able to tell because we don't start in the middle anymore. We start up here at the peak, or it could be the valley depending on the graph. So this one is going to be cosine. So something cosine, and then we'll figure out everything else from there. So first of all, we should probably figure out our shift if we have one. So what you want to do is figure out where is the middle, the horizontal middle. So here's the start, or here's the top, here's the bottom, where's the middle? What ends up being the x-axis. Again, it doesn't have to be, but so our shift is going to be 0, 0, which makes k equals 0. So that means we're going to have plus nothing out back here. Okay, so we have our middle. I think that helps us find our amplitude. So you need to figure out how far above or below are we going, that horizontal x-axis, that x-axis, how far are we going? So we're going up 2, or up 4 actually, because it's going by 2, so 2, 4. And we're going down 4, so there's my amplitude, so that's what goes out front. And then the last thing we need, because we said k is 0, we have to find our period. So we have to figure out what is the endpoint of one full cycle here. So we start here. How long does it take to get back to that point? So we go down, we hit 0, we go underneath, we come back up, still haven't hit that point, but right there is the end. So if this is pi over 2, okay, that means that this would be pi over 4. If you cut it in half, so then we're going by pi over 4, so this would be 2 pi over 4, this would be 3 pi over 4, this would be 4 pi over 4, or just pi. So my period is pi. Okay, and then again you have to take that and set that equal to 2 pi over b to find your b value, so you cross multiply. We get pi times b equals 2 pi, divide by pi, we get b equals 2. So cosine, oh, it's a bad looking 2. So 4 times cosine of 2x would be the graph here again, because there is no shift, and that'll take care of section 11.9.